name is Shарлін Gulak, and I'm actually a mother of 4 daughters, the youngest being 12 and the oldest 19. I live in Gilbert Plains, Manitoba, which is a small, rural, agriculturally based community just about 20 minutes west of Dauphin, Manitoba. So that's about 3.5 hours north of Winnipeg. So we're kind of placed in the central portion of Manitoba. As far as employment is as an entrepreneurship coordinator with Parkland Community Futures. And part of our responsibilities or our goals are to promote entrepreneurship throughout the Parkland region and provide the tools and resources to help our communities succeed. So within our region, I'm also a school trustee for Mountain View School Division. So I just have a really keen interest in education and access to resources for not only our youth, but our rural communities. Some of my educational background is in economic development. I have a degree in political studies and a master's. My master's work is in rural development. So very interested in building success within our rural communities in various sectors. Well, I actually grew up not far from Gilbert Plains, about an hour and a half. My kids are just leaving. An hour and a half north of here, in a small community called Oakbrae, so near Lake Dauphin. So rural life and agriculture is very familiar to me, and a very important part of my life and the life of my daughters. I have lived in Winnipeg, particularly when I was in university. In my early 20s, I've been employed in several jobs in Winnipeg, but probably the last place of employment was working at the Main Street Project, downtown Winnipeg, providing supports and assistance to those living in poverty or perhaps having no home at all. So that was one of the most valuable experiences that I've had, because it really illustrated to me the fact that everyone's lives are integral, everyone's important, and we all create that sense of community no matter where we live. But for me, rural life is very important. We have so many natural assets within a rural community as compared to an urban center like Winnipeg. Like Winnipeg is fantastic as far as nightlife and access to services and variety, and clearly we don't have that same breadth of opportunity in a smaller community such as Gilbert Plains. But in part of that trade-off, we have wide open space. We have an exceptional quality of life and access to many natural amenities and resources. Like we're so near to Duck Mountain Provincial Park and Riding Mountain National Park. We're nestled in an extraordinarily beautiful part of Manitoba. And last year, when I had the good fortune to travel to Ukraine with my daughter's local dance group, just the exposure to the Carpathian Mountains and that landscape is very much reflective of our natural aesthetics out here in the Dauphin Parkland area. So the parallels are very evident and very heartfelt. And it was a year ago at this time that there was about Under 30 of us, with my daughter's Ukrainian dance group and a group of parent chaperones as well. So we were in Ukraine for just under 2 weeks. The dancers, they had the opportunity to perform at a Lviv festival, at a variety of other locations. We had the opportunity to do some workshops, so it was just a once-in-a-lifetime trip, and just extraordinary guides who showed us the big city life of Kiev, but also the rural amenities and communities, and so much of the natural beauty of the country. Well, what I found so interesting, so the similarities in the landscape, like it felt like we were in Canada in so many rural areas of Ukraine, but I guess it would be the scale of things in Ukraine, which seems so much different from what we experience, particularly within our agricultural sector. So the very small farming enterprises that we were exposed to in Ukraine are just teeny tiny snapshots in comparison to what exists here in Manitoba as far as a farm operation. So I think in Canada, in Manitoba in particular, we're much more mechanized as far as the equipment that producers are using. Although I did see some kind of sort of similar combines and tractors in Ukraine, but things operate on a much smaller scale. So I think there's a technological difference. But as far as vegetables produced and gardening, I think Manitobans would have a strong jealousy of what Ukrainian what the Ukrainian climate is and weather is able to produce, because the food products of Ukraine were just phenomenal as far as the flavor and like the longer growing season, which produces beautiful watermelons and all of those things. So I think quality of life that rural Manitoba, our region in particular, what we have to offer is exceptional. So there's a great level of safety, a perception of safety, comfort, clean water, or access to good water, access to health services, access to great quality education. Like those fundamental amenities are fantastic within our rural communities. Sometimes we may have to drive a bit further to access a particular service, but we don't have to compete with traffic to do that, because we have relatively good highways and transportation routes to get to where we need to go. So it's that element of quality of life, which is so valuable for families, for people who are retiring in a community and just want access to great recreational opportunities, and entertainment along those lines. Gilbert Plains in particular has an exceptional golf course. Well, traditionally this region is really dominated by Ukrainian culture. It was Ukrainian settlers who came to the Parkland region, many communities originally, who were producers, who were farmers, who broke the land and settled this area. So that cultural element is still very strong here. But for example, my neighbors across the street are from Ukraine. And they probably moved into the community over 10 years ago. Their daughters are well integrated. The family is well integrated into the community. He's our Ukrainian Catholic priest for the parish here, as well as serving multiple other parishes within the area. I'm part of a Ukrainian adult dance group in Dauphin. called Через. and there's many, we just have a strong love, perhaps a past dancing history with Ukrainian dance groups, and we just wanted to continue it into adulthood. So there's many people that continue to cherish and do what we can to keep that Ukrainian culture and the traditions very much alive within this region. I don't notice any difference beyond perhaps language or just someone's fluency in English. Sometimes those reference points, or there may be challenges in building understanding around that, or understanding the local lingo, different than having some language barriers as far as understanding from any cultural group. At this point in my life, I have no desire to return to live in Winnipeg. I have probably a 1.3 acre yard with a huge garden. Mm-hmm. I probably wouldn't be able to replicate that living in Winnipeg. In Dauphin, we have an immigration resource. It's called Regional Connections, and they've been providing services within the community or the region for several years. So I think that's an important connecting point for immigrants who are looking to relocate into Manitoba is connecting with the local resources that are available. So people may be coming here for employment or for other reasons, but finding those connecting pieces is very important. So, and we have great rural-based resources, Community Futures Parkland being one, and also those immigration-related support. So if you can connect to some of those key partners, they can help filter an individual to the right necessary resources, whether it be for documentation relating to immigration services or the settlement piece, or perhaps for housing supports and all of those other key requirements that are needed for someone to successfully transition. Like Dauphins are our primary regional center of the Parkland region, and Swan River as well within the northern portion of the region offer a pile of resources and free supports that folks can access as far as learning more about our regional centers. But many of our smaller communities have existing local volunteer-based committees or groups which can easily assemble on an ad hoc basis to help provide supports and resources to those who are new to the community, and just providing an introduction and overview of where the school is, where the rec center is, where the golf course is, and kind of the lay of the land. So we have very welcoming communities that are prepared to share resources and provide information to people. I think at this point, just given the pandemic situation that we're in, it's presented some very unique labor market factors that are a little bit out of the ordinary. So I think, and just considering the snapshot of this point in time, employers are struggling to find employees to work for them. So those that have vacancies, the jobs are being snapped up quite quickly by those who are looking for work. So we may see this situation change up into the next few months, depending on how the economy survives and manages through this situation. Opportunity areas for skilled adults who are prepared to work in the ag sector is ag or seasonal related labor activities for ag producers, particularly during their peak times. And we're just getting into that harvest season. So I am aware that many of the local producers would be happy to bring on good employees. Within the healthcare sector, I've just been updated So Prairie Mountain Health is the region that covers our area as well as south of Brandon to the border, the Manitoba border. And there is a dire shortage of healthcare aides right at this time, is always looking for skilled workers in health-related fields. Education, there is a dire need for substitute teachers at this time as we enter in that next phase of return to school. So there's tremendous opportunity for those who are interested in working in education. Training opportunities are available to help build capacity so people can enter into that role, as far as being an educational assistant, becoming a substitute teacher, or even transportation, becoming a bus driver. So there's some strong needs in many of those areas. I think our local employers are taking extreme diligence at following the appropriate recommendations that public health sets out. So everyone is responding as best and most appropriately as we can. And it's been extremely evident within our rural communities, within many of our Indigenous communities that are also in the area. Like, everyone is doing their part to ensure that safety measures are in place, and we're managing as best as we can. Within a rural community where we don't have a lot of variety as far as some of our retail sector and service sector, and those perhaps entertainment sectors, we haven't necessarily felt that impact. We haven't had to see closures take place because it was unsafe for these businesses to exist. We did see a slowdown of services initially in the early stages of the pandemic for particularly food service providers. But many of our services in rural communities have been deemed as essential services, particularly on the ag side, because they have to keep business going. And then, of course, our local grocery store continued and just really thrived and stepped up as far as being responsive to local needs. So our local pharmacy and grocery store, they have and just continue to amp up their delivery services, and taking necessary in-house precautions. Within Parkland, locally, we probably don't appreciate or value the extent to which we are celebrating Ukrainian culture. And after having traveled to Ukraine, that cultural integrity piece is so vital. And I think for a Ukrainian to be living in our area, the value that we can provide as far as simulating that same value or that same sentiment makes us such an attractive location. Particular Parkland region, we're home to Canada's National Ukrainian Festival. We have the Nagridge Pioneer Homestead just north of Gilbert Plains, which is a national historical attraction as far as being one of the pioneer settlements. Yeah. And just replicating that or preserving that history and heritage. So I think that's what's so important about our region is we know how important and valuable our history is. We recognize the interesting and rich heritage that we have as a region, and the mix of Métis and Indigenous related livelihoods that have come to form our many rural communities within Parkland. And it's I think it's human nature, we tend to take that for granted, but there's such a strong appeal, I think, for outsiders coming here for the first time and appreciating that value. And I guess for families with with preschool-age children, it's so important to keep in mind that we have access in a smaller community like Gilbert Plains. We have access to like quality licensed childcare, which I think can be taken for granted. And like we know or come to realize that these services are available in an urban center, but sometimes there are very long waiting lists. So accessibility becomes an issue. Here in Gilbert Plains or Grandview or Dauphin or some of the other surrounding communities, we know that that access is there and it's available for people.